Good morning, good afternoon, good evening guys, gals and gentlepods, and welcome back to the shed, and a happy new year to you all, because today is the 1st of January 2024 and today's job will be starting on sorting out these combustion chambers for Morty. So I'll reposition the camera, show you what I'm at, and then we'll get into it. Right, so we've got the cylinder head. In the absence of some engineer's blue, which I've never owned, never really needed enough to warrant buying it, so I've just gone around with a marker pen around the combustion chamber areas to blank out the area, and then I've laid the gasket over the top, aligned it as best I can, and then just scribed a gentle line in so that I can see the maximum that I could take material out. So I've got a few areas that we can deal with. So the metal can come out of here up to that line and here, which will unshroud the inlet valve. We've also got metal that could come out of here and here, which will help to unshroud the exhaust valve to a little extent. Cylinder 2 is already very close to the sealing ring of the gasket on that side, on the inlet. The exhaust we can take a bit of material out of. This surface needs cleaning up. The rough cast finish, that can just be gently taken down to the height of the valve seats so that it's a smooth transition, lose that step. Just generally smooth up the surface, simply because any high spots could attach carbon, which creates a hot spot, which can then cause pre-ignition. Now the one thing I don't want to do is damage the valve seats in the process of cleaning these up and opening them out. So what I've done is I've made some dummy valves which will sit in there. I can put a nut on the end of the thread, so it's as simple as that. It's just a disc on a piece of 5mm all thread, a couple of nuts to lock it in place. That'll drop in there. I can put a nut and washer on the other end over the valve stem to hold them in place, and then I can get in with the die grinder without fear of damaging the valve seats. So I've got a selection of grinding bits and flap wheels that I can use. So let's get into it, and away we go. It's going to be noisy because it's grinding. Right, a few short minutes and already that's cleaning up nicely. Surface is getting nice and smooth. I'm going to have to switch to the flexible drive shaft. The die grinder itself is just a bit too bulky to handle for jobs like this, and I'm going to have to use some slightly different bits, some smaller grindstones to get in there. Overall that's starting to look pretty good, quite happy with that. Alright, so I switched to the flexi drive shaft and I've just been around it with a little grindstone, that one, sorry, and levelled that ridge out as much as I can. What I don't want to do is take out too much material and end up with a lower compression ratio than I want. I want around 10 to 1. So I'm just going to clean that up with a flat wheel, and then we'll get the valves back in and measure it. So it's going to be a bit noisy again. Right, we'll pop those dummy valves out again and then have a measure. Right, so I want the valves for number 1 cylinder, which are these two. Now what I'm going to do, because I don't want to have to go through all the hassle of putting the springs on to get them to clamp in, but I need something to make sure that they seal, because I don't want the fluid that I'm going to measure it with running through. So I'm just going to put a little film of Vaseline on the seat area, and that should ensure that they seal, but without causing any wrong measurements, because if it was too thick and pushes the valve into the combustion chamber, obviously that's going to reduce the volume of it, which we don't want, because that would give us a false reading. So right, I'll get set up and we'll be back in a moment. This is the setup for measuring the volume of the combustion chamber. So it's a piece of perspex with 2 holes drilled in it, sealed to the cylinder head with Vaseline around the perimeter of the combustion chamber, and then the glass tube is called a burette that holds liquid, and it's got a graduated scale on it. So I put some fluid in, note how much fluid is on the graduated scale, and then open the tap at the bottom, allowing the liquid to run into the combustion chamber. As it runs in through one hole, the air is expelled from the other, and then when it's completely filled, turn the tap off, make a note of the reading on the burette, subtract one number from the other, and that gives me the actual volume of the combustion chamber. Pretty simple really. Just make a note of my numbers. Right, we are on 43.4. So I've got the burette set up with a load of kerosene in it. I've got the valve sealed, I've got the spark plug in, I've got my shield on the top. Let's run some kerosene in and see what we've got, measure the volume. Right, so that is now exactly full, and we are now on 66.2. So if we subtract, our starting level was 43.4. So if we do 66.2 minus 43.4 equals 22.8, so I've still got a bit to go. It's a question of a little bit at a time, because going too far would be a bad thing, taking too much out, because then I'd have to have the head skimmed to bring it back, but it would also mean that I've got to take all the other 3 combustion chambers too far to get them to match that, then have the head skimmed yet again, and I don't really want to have this head skimmed any further, because then I'm going to be getting into the territory of the valves hitting the pistons. So it really needs to be very carefully done, bit at a time. So I'll get that all drained out and we'll take a bit more meat out of it. One moment please. Okay, so I've done 1, 2, 3. I've got them to 24.8 cc's each, which gives me a compression ratio of 10.7 to 1, which I can live with. That's well within the realms of usability and should deliver a reasonable increase in power on its own, never mind the bigger bore and all the other stuff. So I'm just on to pot number 4. So what I've done once I'd done the first one and got it to the size I wanted, to the volume I wanted, I made a cardboard template of it, which I have then in turn placed over and marked around. So I've marked around this one with the marker pen, and that black marking, if I zoom in a bit, I may need to just reposition the camera slightly. There we go. So the black area is the metal that's got to be removed. Face mask on, because this cast iron dust is really unpleasant in your lungs. And here we go. I have to keep stopping periodically because the flexible shaft gets quite warm there, so I just have to stop and let it cool down. I'm using a tungsten carbide or carbide tongue slide, whatever you want to call it, burr on a long series shaft, which enables me to get in, because the chuck on this flexible shaft is quite chunky and I don't really want to be battering that against the cylinder head. So it's just a question of working that gently along, not putting a lot of pressure on it. The surface, the horizontal surface between the two valve holes, if you like, is the trickier bit to do, because you can't get in at a flat angle easily. So you're trying to do it using the very end of the burr. Once I've got the majority of the material out with that, I will then switch to a small drum sander on it to smooth out, and then finally finishing off with a small 80 grit flat wheel. And then it's a question of popping the valves back in and sealing it up and measuring the volume as I did before. F5, the handle's getting a bit warm again. The dummy valves that I made work really well. they're protecting the valve seats nicely. So, and they're sacrificial, they don't matter, but they're giving protection to the valve seats. I have cut the valve seats, just a cheap, well, semi-cheap kit that I bought on Amazon. So a selection of cutters and guides, and basically just find the most appropriate one, the closest fit to the valve guide and the closest fit to the diameter of the valve seat. So then you screw your cutter onto the end of the shaft, screw your guide shaft into the holder, drop that into your guide, put your T-handle on, and then you just turn it with very light pressure. You don't have to put a lot of weight on it. They're tungsten carbide cutters, they're very sharp, and in 1 to 2 turns will clean up the seats a treat. So I've cut the main face at 45 degrees, and I've also cut a relief at 30 degrees, so that's in there. I haven't got a 20 degree the other way to do the 3-angle seat, and in all honesty the difference it will make is not, in my opinion, worth the cost of buying another cutter. So 2-angle seats will do the job nicely. So I'll, when the tool's cooled down and when my hand's recovered, I shall continue with that, clean that last bit out, and then we can polish it up a bit and then get the perspex on it and measure the volume. I've got a little bit more to come out there. You don't always see it from one angle. It pays to turn it round and look at it from different angles, and a good torch, good LED torch, makes life a lot easier because you can get the light right in where you need it to see what you're doing. One other little detail I nearly forgot to mention. I have also skimmed 0.5 millimetre off the face of the valves. This means they sit deeper. Well, they don't sit deeper, but the surface of the valve is closer to the surface of the combustion chamber, so it helped in removing material to get the compression ratio where I want it. So just a little detail. Right, pop them back in and get back to it. Oh, it's getting close. Just need to let the tool cool down a bit. Right, that's roughed it out to the shape. pretty good. I'll do change the cutter from the carbly tongue slide to a grinding bit. That'll just enable me to just smooth up some of the edges. And now switching to a small drum sander, which will just enable me to put a slightly better finish on it. Switch to a small flap wheel just to finally finish it off. And that's about it. Right, I need to pop valves in and measure that volume and see what we're at. So, one moment please. Right, so I'm getting set up to measure the volume of that chamber that I've just done. I'm looking for 24.8 cc's, and then as before, open the tap, let that run in. That gives us 24.4 cc's, so we're 0.4 shy of the target. So a little bit more and we're there. Right, we're really not looking for much, 0.4, so I'm going to take a little bit out of here and a bit out of there with just a small grinding bit. Right, that's about finished. I've cleaned a little bit more out, remeasured it. I've now got all four at 24.8 cc's, which gives me a 10.7 to 1 compression ratio, which is right where we want it to be. Didn't want to go too high on the compression because it could end up knocking the bottom end out or doing other damage. So I'm erring on the side of caution. Remember, this is not a full race build. It's pepping up an old car. But they look alright. I'm quite pleased with them. They look pretty good. And skinning the valves down 1/2 mil has helped. Right, I know I look like an unmade bed. That's my normal state. That's about it for this video. Can't really do a lot more because the head needs to be cleaned before I can reseat the valves, and then I can get it back on the flow bench, and hopefully we can measure an improvement in flow, and then we can get it all built back up. But that's about it for this video. I hope you found it interesting, possibly helpful if you're doing a similar job. It's a very time consuming job. It's opened my eyes to what is involved in doing this kind of work, and why, if you're having one done professionally, or if you're buying a ready done cylinder head, stage 2, stage 3, whatever they want to call it, if it's properly ported and cleaned up, the man hours involved are big, and therefore the cost is going to be big. So that's why such a job is expensive. Anyway, that's about enough of this waffle. I hope you found it interesting, possibly helpful. If you have, hit the like, the subscribe, the notifications, all the usual YouTube nonsense, and I'll see you in the next video, which will be a couple of weeks time, hopefully. I'm very aware that we're into now the middle of January and the season starts in March, which doesn't really give me that many weeks to get this done. Thankfully, the only thing I've got left to do now is getting this head done and getting the engine built and back in the car with the gearbox and then get it running. So, thanks for watching. See you in the next video.